Let's move on. Let's get into round 9, and we will start with our tips. A couple of big games this weekend, and we do start on Thursday night at the MCG, probably the game of the round with Carlton versus Melbourne. So I'll get into my tips first. I've gone the Demons over Carlton. Friday night, I've gone Geelong over Port Adelaide. Friday night as well, I've gone Sydney over Fremantle. Saturday afternoon, I've gone Hawthorn over St Kilda down in Tassie. Saturday evening, I've gone GWS over Essendon. Big game, that one. Saturday night, I've gone the Bulldogs over Richmond. Saturday night as well, I've gone the Gold Coast Suns over North Melbourne. Sunday early game, I've gone Collingwood over the Eagles. And in the final game of round 9, I've gone the Crows over Brisbane. Let's get into your tips.
Alright, so on Thursday night, I've went the Demons over Carlton. Friday night, I've went Geelong over Port Adelaide. Also on Friday night, I've went the Swans over the Dockers. Saturday afternoon, I've went the Saints over the Hawthorn. Saturday afternoon as well, I've went Essendon over the Giants. Saturday night, I've went the Bulldogs over Richmond. Also Saturday night, I've went the Gold Coast over North Melbourne. Sunday, I've went Collingwood over the Eagles and the Crows over the Lions.
Alright, so we've got a couple different this week. But we will start right at the start of the round. Carlton versus Melbourne. I have gone Melbourne because, as I said last week, and this is why I picked Collingwood over Carlton, Carlton just won't have Mackay or Curnow leading enough, and they just bomb it in, and Melbourne are going to have a field day with this. We saw it against Geelong. If the Melbourne defence get on top, they're very hard to beat. And we talked about it a little bit earlier in the podcast, but Carlton right now are the 5th worst team for conceding scores, and only in front of the teams in the bottom 4. So I think that Carlton's defence are going to struggle. Melbourne will be able to do enough to stop Carlton kicking a bigger score. I think they match up very nicely, the Melbourne defenders on the Carlton forwards. The one thing I will say though, I do think Carlton have a much better forward line. So if they can get on top, I think Melbourne will struggle because we can see they really find it tough to score. But at the moment, I trust Melbourne's defence over Carlton's forward line. That's why I've tipped Melbourne.
Yeah, I went Melbourne because I trust their forward line more than I trust Carlton's defence.
Okay.
Because I don't think that Carlton have a game plan to play against Fritsch. I really don't. I think they got that one. Yeah, and I think at the moment, with the high of beating Geelong at their best stage of the season, their defence should be able to hold up.
Next up, we get to the Swans versus the Dockers. So this is at Optus Stadium. I think this is such a big game. I think the matchups in this one will be massive through that midfield, and I think that's where this game's going to be won, in the midfield battle. If the Swans can play as tough as they did last week against the GWS midfielders, I think the Swans will win this one comfortably. But if Fremantle can dominate through the middle of the ground, we do see that Luke Jackson will probably be the sole ruck this week because I think Sean Darcy will likely be out. I do think that Fremantle can definitely give this one a shake. Tom McCartney's a pretty big out for Sydney, but I do think that the likes of Dane Rampy can match up on Amos pretty well. And I think that Melican's had a brilliant year so far for Sydney, very underrated year. I think he'll match up on probably Tracy, I would say. Maybe the other way around because Tracy does tend to get up the ground. Sydney's forward line as well need to perform. They need to bring the ball to ground because Fremantle's defence has probably been one of the best this year. Luke Ryan coming off a 39 possession game, who was massive. Alex Pearce, the worst defender in the AFL according to you, has had a very good year, All-Australian year. But I think this is going to be very big. But I do think that Sydney just have a little bit more class on that wing as well with Errol Gulden. I don't know if they can stop him. And if Chad Warner gets off the leash in the midfield, as he's done a lot this year, him, Heaney, Golden, I just think they're a little bit more classy through that midfield at the moment, and I think that's why Sydney will win.
Yeah. I've went the Swans because I think their midfield is better than the Dockers on the fact is that they get more score involvements and they get more into the attack than the Freo Dockers midfield do. Isaac Heaney, Errol Gulden and Chad Warner in the top 5 for score involvements in the league.
And they've got the likes of James Rowbottom running through their highest tackler in the AFL at the moment.
Yeah. The Swans forward line may have a tough task, but I think if they chuck James Jordan onto Luke Ryan...
Yeah, he had a massive game last week on Lockie Whitfield.
Yeah, it's a bit different. Lockie Whitfield isn't that intercept player, and Luke Ryan
so James
is...
Jordan's going to have to make himself dangerous early. That's what he's going to have to do to make Luke Ryan accountable.
And they do have a good record in Perth. I know that the West Coast haven't been great, and Freo have been up and down the last couple of years, but they do have a good record there.
Let's move into Hawthorn versus St Kilda because that was our first different pick of the week. I've picked Hawthorn, one because this is down in Tasmania. They have a very good record down there. St Kilda, they played pretty poorly against North Melbourne, only won by 35 points, which at the moment is not a very big win against North at all. And Hawthorn brought something last week against the Western Bulldogs, which we haven't seen this year. A little bit of spirit, a little bit of fight, and I think that Sam Mitchell is going to breed into him. We can win 2 in a row here. We've got a team that's low, a team that's not in the best of form. Right now, Max King can't score, but I do think that Hawthorn, if they can win this around the middle, that's where they need to win it though, because St Kilda right now, that's where they can win this game. But if they can win, if they can at least get 50-50 in the midfield, they can get it forward. They've got some dangerous players up there, and St Kilda can't score at the moment. So if Hawthorn can kick 75, 80 plus, I think they probably win this game.
Yeah, I went in the Saints just for the fact is that a lot of people aren't really talking about this, but the fact is that Jimmy Webster came back and they put Sinclair straight into the midfield. I think it's a huge difference.
He does give a little bit of difference in that midfield, because
and
the likes of Jack Steele and Wyn Hager, there are a lot more of those stoppage clearance.
Yeah, like
players.
we were talking about Freo.
Yeah, with Hayden Young.
Yeah, but and the fact is that they just need to somehow get Wanganeen Malera and Brad Hill at the same time playing well. I don't think Wanganeen Malera played that well against North Melbourne, impact-wise. And I think if they can get them both working, I think they can get a good score.
Last game we'll talk about, another tip between us that we decided differently. Giants versus Essendon. I've gone the Giants. I think Tom Green plays. I think he was a massive out against Sydney last week. And I think Adam Kingsley was absolutely ropeable by their performance in that second quarter. Did you see some of the highlights? I would not want to make him angry. The biceps of that man. If there's not a couple of holes in the downstairs of the away rooms in the SCG, I don't know what's happening. I feel like there's at least 3 holes in there, and I don't think the Giants are going to let that happen again.
Yeah.
Tom Green was a massive out though. Now the game was a lot different. This is at Marvel, a lot more of a quicker game. A lot more of a quicker ground, of course. But I think when they lost Tom Green last week, there was no real grunt in the midfield. There's that... Josh Kelly is a bigger body, but he's not a big body midfielder. The likes of Tom Green, he brings that difference. And if he's fit, I feel like that brings something different. I feel like they still win this game without him because it is at Marvel. I don't see the Bombers' forward line can compete against the Giants' defence. I think they had a stinker last week. And I don't think that happens again. That's why I think that the Giants of like Sam Taylor, Buckley, who played okay, but they are a lot better than what they did against Sydney. I don't think they have 2 stinkers in a row. I think that's where they're going to beat the Bombers.
I've went Essendon because I reckon Zach Merritt is in career best form. And they may try and put a tag on him, but I think that if that happens, Darcy Parish can get off the leash. And
which kind of... Well, I mean, he had a good game last week as well, Darcy Parish against the Eagles.
And Nick Martin's in career best form, and I think his drive off halfback could affect them. And I think no one's not talking about him this year, but Andy McGrath is playing in great form, and I think
form right now.
And I reckon he'll go straight to Toby Green. And even though Toby Green's had a terrible season to his standards, I think that they'll shut him down. Toby, Bedford and all the smalls aren't playing that well either. It's going to be one in the midfield, and if Tom Green isn't back, I think that Essendon could have a field day in the midfield.
One thing as well is the Giants flogged them by 126 points.
Yeah,
so
I think
that's a point to prove as well, the Bombers. Before we move into the AFL Fantasy, let's just quickly break down the Channel's AFL Tipping League. I thought I'd do it last week, sorry. Anyway, last week wasn't important. This week it's important because your boy Dylan has absolutely climbed the ranks. He's jumped into equal third spot. Sorry. He got a 6-week tipping. Oh, absolutely brilliant. He equal top score with a couple of people in the league. We had the likes of Paul, myself, Johnny getting 6 tips. Brilliant job, guys. We did really well. Pat on the backs to all of us. Brendan S still leads the tipping comp with 51 tips. He did have a 4-tip week though, pretty poor. He still holds a 3-point lead on myself and still has a 1-point lead on Kirsty. Kirsty did get 1 tip back though, she is on 50. And at the moment, my brother equal bottom with a shocking week of 3 tips, the worst out of the league.
Yeah, I tried to go for some out there tips and they all failed.
He tipped Richmond over Fremantle. What the fuck was that?
I was the only one that took Gold Coast over Brisbane.
Yeah, which is even weirder.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not even as weird. I don't know why you tipped Richmond. So many people who put up a couple of clips on it were like, why the hell did you tip Richmond? And
Well, I was sure they were going to show some grunt. They just showed nothing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Again.
Their injuries just too much.
Yeah, and I
You're in for a report,
tipped, and a lot of people tipped Collingwood. I tipped,
Carlton.
yeah, the only one
That
that
was a bit half and half.
the only one that was half and half. Well, the one that I went that was a lot that a lot of people thought they shouldn't have tipped is the Crows. Really, everyone thought.
Yeah,
the
we
Crows,
actually I picked that one as well.
Yeah.
I guess I should have picked Sydney. I should have picked my team. Would have got 7 this week, but that was one I missed. But yeah, that's interesting because yeah, you went for a bit of out there tips that may have actually got you right back in it, but right now it's making you fall right off the pace. You're off 7 tips off top. So right now you're on bottom, equal bottom with Jacob on 44 with Daniel as well. So right now, Brendan S still leads with the 51 tips, like I just said.